I just want to, so we're ready to start the episode, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just getting prepared. Hold on.
Oh, look at the props. Keith is coming with the heat early.
I'm ready. That's what this film is about, right? It's about conspiracy theories. And
well, yeah, define conspiracy theories.
Things that are opposed to the unconventional or the conventional line of thinking?
Yeah, so the movie we were discussing today is a little film called JFK.
Y'all gotta get into your minds how the hell the spooks think. Now, they're not ordinary crooks. Think the unthinkable. Question everything. Now, we're through the looking glass here, people. White is black, and black is white.
JFK is my #3 favorite film of all time. It's directed by Oliver Stone. Came out in, I think, late 1991, early 92. Stars, it has a fantastic cast.
An amazing cast.
Really great cast, led by Kevin Costner. And it explores, in some depth, the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, our beloved president known as JFK in 1963. There's a lot to be said. This movie made some waves. We could say that. I think that's fair to say. This film made some waves when it came out, and I think it's a very polarizing film in a lot of ways, but primarily because of the subject matter. It follows, Kevin Costner plays a man named Jim Garrison, who was a district attorney of New Orleans during the time of the assassination and in the time afterwards. And he becomes convinced that there is a larger conspiracy at play in the assassination attempt, that it was not just the lone gunman Lee Harvey Oswald, that it was in fact very expansive. And he seeks to prosecute someone in that case to call national attention to everything that's going on. Keith, what was your background on this film? What was your pre-knowledge, and how did that line up? How did it stack up?
I mean, I don't know anything specific. I feel like I just knew the general story going in, that Kennedy could not have been killed by a lone gunman. I'll tell you, my understanding of the situation going into the film was really mainly made up of the Seinfeld episode where Kramer spits on, what was it, Keith Hernandez? I forget who it was.
Yeah, Keith Hernandez.
Yeah. But the part that I love about the Seinfeld episode is I didn't need to watch that for 3.5 hours to get the same amount of information.
I'm saying that the spit could not have come from behind. That there had to have been a second spitter.
There's a lot of things to talk about. Both the content of the film and the point that it's making, which is pretty heady stuff, pretty heavy stuff. Its implications are vast, but also just from a filmmaking standpoint, like that's what we try to talk about. So let's focus on that to start.
Okay. So filmmaking, we're just from the film standpoint.
From a film standpoint, because much can be made and debated, much can be made of and thoroughly debated about the legitimacy of Oliver Stone's, take on that event, and we can go back and forth on some of that. It's interesting, but it's also, you can find that information everywhere. There's a lot of in-depth dissections of the validity of this film versus historical accuracy. But from a filmmaking standpoint, purely, I think it is a masterpiece. I think it is a tour de force, to use a cliche term. I wondered to myself last night, you're going to think this is crazy, I can tell by your face, by your stupid face. I can tell. I wondered to myself, is this maybe the single greatest directorial achievement almost ever, in terms of scope of the film, in terms of the subject matter, in terms of the audacity? I felt like audacity was a good word for this. Like, the audacity you have to attempt to make this film in this way, while also supervising an Academy Award-winning Best Cinematography situation, Academy Award-winning Best Editing. I mean, I think the film itself is amazingly unique and original in terms of structure. It's interspersals of documentary footage and really weaving between fact and fiction, for lack of a better way of saying it. The intensity of certain scenes that are intense because they're rapidly cut to other stuff. Oliver Stone does this thing in all of his movies, but this is my favorite, obviously, of just random kind of one-off shots where there's just people, there's kids playing that have no bearing to the story, but you just see them for a second, but we're really focusing on this. There's a lot happening in a beautiful, beautiful way from a directorial standpoint.
I'm going to challenge you just a little bit on the audacity thing. I know it feels like it's such a big moment. It feels like such a thing, like this, you know, underground movement or whatever, like this cult thing, unearthing this diamond in a rough sort of thing. But when you think about it, this cast is the biggest cast I think I've ever seen of like notable stars of the 90s. Like everybody is somebody, or at least goes on to be somebody. It couldn't have been that like poo-pooed in Hollywood circles. Like the crazy nature of how were they able to make this film would have been supported a lot more if there was just nobody in it and Oliver Stone was like really pushing to make this happen. Like it wasn't being shut down. Like the production was, a studio signed off on it. Like they made it's a blockbuster film.
I don't mean it from that extent. I don't know that it was necessarily poo-pooed or dismissed or, you know, blacklisted in a Hollywood sense.
Yeah.
It was destroyed by the national media 6 months before it even came out, which lends some credence to the more conspiratorial aspects of things.
Of course.
That, you know, it's all part of the same machine working to keep these kind of stories down. But the audacity I was speaking of is sort of has to do with that, but is just also about the scope of everything. So it's not just, oh, he's so brave to try to tell this story that people are going to fight him on, though they have and they did.
Yeah, some people will, obviously.
Yeah, but more just about all of it as a whole. To the audacity, including the cast, to try to wrangle that cast to say, I'm going to make a movie that brings what was at that time a popular conspiracy theory, but still a conspiracy theory, to the mainstream using one of the best casts, you know, in memory, mainstream movie stars, and make it this huge event. Because there's a way to do it in a really subtle, you know, in a way that tries to like ease people in to the idea that this is happening. This movie does not do any easing. I mean, this movie is like, let's go.
How proud are you? How proud are you of that, of what you just did?
I'm having a lot of emotions right now.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Whether or not I think that was a good idea.
that is. I need a quick 30.
The movie itself it doesn't shy away from being aggressive. You know, like it's got a point to make, and it's going to make you uncomfortable as a viewer, but it's not going to take it easy. And I think that Oliver Stone's directing style typically is very aggressive.
Yeah.
And while that probably turns people off in other aspect or other films, I think that here it works perfectly. That's one of the things I really like about it. I just feel assaulted. I'm just assaulted with everything from the minute it starts. From that, you're just assaulted with information and a military drumbeat that's just building. Just like, oh, okay, we're in. I'm in the military now. Like, we're here.
I've enlisted. Yeah, I think that's inherently his style. My favorite Oliver Stone film, I feel like he does mostly political stuff. So ironically, I picked the non-films. I like Any Given Sunday. Any Given Sunday is directed very similarly to JFK, where there's a grittiness to it, and it plays to making you uncomfortable in you know, through its visuals. Like the story is hard hitting, but then the way he directs and has those little inserts, and you know, it sort of like startles you and gives you that like uncomfortable feeling that you need to have for those moments. So he was true to form in this film, and I like that about it. When you say assaulted, and getting into the stuff that I didn't like about it a little bit, like assaulted is the right word to use. From the dialogue standpoint, man, it feels like there was these, I mean, the film was like almost, the version I watched was 3.5 hours long. You pointed out to me that there was like a 20-minute less version that I could have watched. But there was such long, dialogue was so long and so dense for so many parts. It felt very slow in that sense. And that's why I think they really needed to like have all those jarring images and things. Everything was cut really well and shot very interestingly. A lot of movement to break up. Like some scenes were like 20 minutes long, 15-minute long, one person talking. The last
It's not a casual watch.
It is not a casual watch. It's monologues. It's half-hour monologues. It's just
like this one.
Yeah, like this one you're doing, and you're listening and you're witnessing. So this is JFK.
This is meta. Keith is doing this to prove a meta point.
To prove a point that I am as equally as long-winded as this film is. So I didn't like that part.
Yeah. In response, I'll just say, yes, it is long. It is a slow burn. There is a ton of information that comes across that they feel they need to get through. Like, it's probably not a great watch for just pure entertainment value. Yes. Although even as I say that, I kind of disagree with myself, because I think that comes back to the masterful direction, which is that this film that is 3+ hours of information being shared with you very directly is somehow, in my opinion, riveting, and is
because you're interested by the subject matter. Like, it's such a small.
Well, I am, but it's also the buildup. There's a lot of emotion there in terms of. I say this, and people think I'm joking. I think JFK is maybe the scariest movie that I've ever seen. I think it's genuinely frightening.
Why?
Throughout, I can't watch it at night with the lights off by myself.
That's
like, it's
weird.
Literally,
what is so scary about this film? Like, what scares you about the film?
It's scary if you believe to any degree that any of this sort of thing is possible. That the government is capable and willing to do such dark things, and that the level of paranoia sort of builds. Like, one of my favorite scenes is Joe Pesci as David Ferry in the hotel when they go visit him in the hotel room, and he's just losing his mind, and he's checking the windows, he's checking the closets, and the music is slowly building, and so there's a knock on the door, and he's panicking, and he's trying to explain to them that this web goes so high and is so deep and is so expertly spun that he yells, even the fucking shooters don't know.
Who did the president? Who killed Kennedy? Fuck, man! It's a mystery! It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma! The fucking shooters don't even know! Don't you get it? Fuck, man! I can't keep talking like this. You're gonna fucking kill me! I'm gonna fucking die!
That level of justified paranoia in the power of Big Brother is frightening.
That's 65% of the population lives like that every day.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is I think that's why the movie was such a huge success too. Is people can relate
want
to that.
believe. I have no idea if it's true or not. That's not what I'm making the statement about. But I think people want to believe that things like this are true. People want to believe that they've figured out the truth and feel good about themselves, that they are smart enough to figure out the real story. Whatever it is. I'm not even talking about, like, I just think human nature in general. That's what people are addicted to, feeling like they are smarter than other people.
That is the universal appeal of any conspiracy theory.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that a movie like this would do well. They should make another movie just like that. And like, you could make another movie like that right now, and people would be like, "I love it."
We're living that.
We're living it in real time.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Sorry, I don't mean to go down this road too early. We can keep talking about.
No, it's okay. We have to get there at some point. So, I'm trying to be very measured. I'm trying to. Just the slightest personal background here is I am.
I live underground.
I'm insane.
Yeah, I live underground. I drink jars of my own urine.
Yeah. No, I've gone down these roads. Like that's where I'm willing to go. Is just to, like, I have a sizable portion of my life, as my adult life has been consumed with different aspects of going through the looking glass, so to speak. So I think I can speak to the notions of conspiracy theories and the attractiveness that they hold and that lifestyle and all that stuff, as well as a lot of people. You know, I know better than most because I've lived it. And that's probably one of the reasons I love this film so much, is because I saw this film right as I was really getting into the mix, 12, 13 years ago, when I'm in my early mid-20s and feeling like I'm discovering these secrets about the world.
To draw a parallel, when I first saw The Karate Kid, I wanted to learn karate. I can imagine you seeing this film as a kid and you're like, I need to know the ins and outs of the government and I'm going to figure this out. And like, I could feel this fueling your fire to figure out the realities of the inner workings of our government.
Some of us were already expert martial artists.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Karate Kid came out, so I wasn't impressed.
Before it gets too heavy, I want to point out what I thought is one of the worst acting performances in my life. Not entire performance, but like delivery of a line. I think it is comedically bad.
Okay.
From Kevin Costner. The first line of the film that Kevin Costner gives.
Oh no?
Boss, the president's been shot in Dallas 5 minutes ago.
Oh no.
Is the worst performance I've ever seen of a line. Like, that's student film bad. I was blown away.
Oh no.
And Kevin Costner is like, I think he's a decent actor. Like, I don't like, he's kind of one note to me. I'd be curious what you think of Kevin Costner in general. But it almost looked like a mistake. Like, I don't understand how that's in the film. I don't understand how that could be your response to someone comes into the door. It says the president's been shot, and then your response is, oh no.
It's a unique delivery.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
No, I could give you 10 examples of Kevin Costner alone that are worse than other films.
Give me another example. Like that.
His entire performance in the movie 13 Days is a nightmare. It's also JFK related, and he's doing a Boston accent that is...
Morning, Jackie.
Hi, Kevin.
Want to schedule?
No.
It's generous to even call it a Boston accent. It is on another level.
Do you want to do your Boston accent again?
It is the worst accent of all time. What's that?
Do you want to do
it
your
makes my Boston accent sound like Matt Damon. Gotta go to Harvard and buy a pizza. Kevin Costner, I think, is in most of his roles is feast or famine. I don't think he's very good, but he's very likable.
Like, I think he's
very likable, but he's in movies where he really has to do heavy lifting. I don't think he's very good, but that's another reason I like this movie. Is I think this is easily his greatest performance, and I think that final scene, which we'll talk about later, his whole monologue in the courtroom, is really high level.
The truth is the most important value we have, because if the truth does not endure, if the government murders truth, if we cannot respect the hearts of these people, then this is not the country in which I was born in, and it's certainly not the country that I want to die in.
I think he's nailing it. Like that also it adds to the emotion of the scene, which is for me is already a very emotional scene. To just see Kevin Costner nailing it. Like, okay, Kevin found his rhythm, right place, right time. He's so perfect in that final scene where his voice is cracking in a very believable way and his eyes are kind of glazed with tears. And I mean, I get emotional thinking about it. It's a really, really powerful scene. So I think feast or famine. This movie throughout, I think he's mostly very good. There are a couple of one-off lines where I go, oh, there's that Kevin Costner shining through.
Oh no.
I think the thing that with this film and a lot of other conspiratorial media, other documentaries or other movies about that deal with conspiracy theories, is like with this film. Let's say for argument's sake, this film gives you 500 examples of evidence of how JFK was killed by a conspiracy, right? that there was more than one shooter. Let's say that it presents 500 pieces of evidence. And let's say generously to the naysayers that 100 pieces of that evidence is fabricated or inaccurate. That's a fifth, right? That's a fifth of the evidence that's being put forth. So it's easy for a naysayer to be like, look at all the liberties they've taken. Look at, I can find one thing wrong with this movie, so that's proof that this whole thing is bullshit. And that, as again, when I was more heavier into this stuff, I really was upset by that and aggravated by that thinking. Because liberties were taken. But that doesn't mean that every point being made is now bullshit and fake. And so I think that's an easy way for people to dismiss it. To say, okay, well, you know what? Actually, that newspaper thing was possible. So that's not true. So clearly Oliver Stone's a liar, and this whole film is discredited. You know what I mean? Like that. There's a lot of that. And what I've found, again, just kind of trying to dive back in a little bit last night to talk about this today, is that a lot of the major complaints about the accuracy of this film, the majority of those are not as major as I had expected. Oliver Stone consolidates some characters into, one character for the sake of the film. The female assistant, played by Laurie Metcalf, in this movie was not. There were no female assistants. Like, it was all men. So she's kind of made up. Michael Rooker's character, Bill Broussard, was not a real person, but I think they needed to have somebody in there that was like a naysayer. So I mean, there's things like that, and there are actual evidential elements that are massaged or left out. Things that might hurt the narrative were left out. I think it's dishonesty by subtraction, sort of.
You would have felt an army presence in the streets that day. None of this happened.
But this is the tricky part. I mean, we talked a little bit about this for Zodiac. I personally feel like these types of films are interesting but I don't value them as much. I just rather them be documentaries, and that's a personal preference or whatever. Because if I'm going to watch a movie like this, I really want to know what's true. I want an argument that's presented, and I want it to be presented in an entertaining way, not a book report or whatever, as I joke. But that's what I think documentaries are. Like, interesting stories about real life events with real facts and real information. And then when you get into these films, then you get into someone making a creative decision and be like, well, we need another character to offset. We need a naysayer. And, we really should represent a woman in here, because in real life, we're not doing that yet. And we should have a woman be represented because we should do that. That's the right thing to do. You get into artistic choices about, and then that really hurts any integrity films have that are trying to make a statement like, well, this is real, and you should listen to this and believe in this, take this seriously in a real way. Well, I understand where people start to pick it apart, but then that's why it makes me feel like, well, these types of films should really be documentaries, not films. And again, that's a personal thing. I'm sure you could argue. Yeah. But you understand my point, at least?
Did you find, yeah, sort of. I mean, I disagree based even on our conversation with Zodiac, but did you find that, because Zodiac is a very, as well as they could, a very literal depiction of reality.
Correct.
Whereas this one is a little more interpretive, a little more exaggerated in some elements.
Agreed.
For the sake of storytelling. Did you enjoy this movie more than Zodiac?
I did. I enjoyed, even though it was 3 times as long.
They're both long.
I enjoyed this movie more. It did feel like, even those little touches, like, it helps. It helps the storytelling. Yeah.
The last thing let's talk about is just that final scene, that final monologue, which you mentioned is very long. And
sure is.
That's what my girlfriend said after we watched it last night too. Is like, it's so funny the way different people watch it, right? I love that monologue. It's maybe my favorite part of the movie. Like I said, I mentioned how great Kevin Costner is in it, but he just really, especially the end of it, he really appeals to the viewer, right? I mean, going so far as lensing it for the last thing, it's all up to you, and that was so impactful to me as a young man, entering this world, and this character that I'm just so enamored with is now looking at me and saying it's up to you to make the difference that you want in the world. And I just thought, oh my God. So I love that. But at the end of it, I'm sitting there like in tears, like trying to hide my tears, and my girlfriend just goes, God, that's the longest monologue of all time.
It is. It's like 40 minutes, like 30 minutes. It's so much. It's so much.
But it's beautiful.
The running time of that monologue is a normal film length. That's one film in itself. You just clip that off and be like, oh, that's a movie.
Tonight, President Trump getting caught up in his own JFK conspiracy after deciding not to release all the documents tied to the assassination.
There's still a bulk of documents that are not released. And I was talking with my girlfriend about this after we watched the movie last night. I was like, they're never going to release that stuff.
Never.
Like, there's just no reason for them to do that.
Yeah.
Even if everyone involved is long dead, there's just no reason to sow distrust in the government.
And that's yes. So we'll never know.
We'll never know. I feel like we know. I mean, if it's not clear already, like there's to me like there's so many other interesting maybe not conspiracy theories out there to think about. JFK is such a foregone conclusion. Like, it's just so there's not even a infantile part of my brain that thinks that Lee Harvey Oswald just did that as he did.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the official story. Yeah. But here's the thing that I want to say in defense of crazy people is just because you have doubts. Yeah, exactly. Please, this is the time. Just because you may doubt the severity of a conspiracy theory, right? There's from the conspiracy theory meter starts just a centimeter away from the official story. And so if you have any doubts about the official story, you're right there. And it goes all the way down here, which is a dark, terrible place that no one should ever be. But that's a huge gray area. And so I think it's this whole world, we talk about this all the time, everything's so binary. You're either black or white, you're this or this. But that's not true. I think a lot of people are in that gray area of, you know what, maybe I don't think that Lyndon Baines Johnson signed off on the assassination attempt of the current president, but maybe there was a little more to the story than they're telling us. You know what I mean? It's like, even if you want to give the government the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe there was just a rogue element, one or two people in the government that did this. I don't personally believe that, but you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of, and I feel that way about all major conspiracy theories of the last however long, 40, 50, 60 years is, official stories from the government. Like who trusts the government?
Here we go.
Isn't that a universal? No, but I mean, come on, really? Does across the aisle, does anyone think, the government really, they do, everything's on the up and up, and they really want what's best for me and my family? Does anyone think that? Because I got a lot of bad news for you.
And to some degree, yes, and to some degree, no. It's to what extent are they manipulating us? Because to me, I think there's a level that I'm okay with being manipulated. If you want to trust the government in any degree, you would trust them in the sense like they're giving us the stuff we need to know. Because I don't think the general public needs to know everything. Not in the JFK situation. That would be a need to know situation. That's the only sort of devil's advocate I'll play for. There's going to be some mistrust. They're going to be holding stuff from us. They're going to be manipulating us in a certain way. But to me, there's a tolerable amount of that. That's a small window for me, but I will accept some of it. I'm a sheep. I'm a puppet. I get it.
The big argument he has with his wife, that Kevin Costner has with Sissy Spacek, where he's cursing in front of the children, and she's saying she just wants to go back to normal life.
You don't believe me?
I don't know.
All this time, you never believed me.
I just want to raise our children and live a normal life. I want my life back.
And he's saying we can't do that. Like, don't you think I miss normal life? Like, this is he has a higher purpose now. I think that scene makes me tear up every time. I think it's really wonderfully acted, and it really summarizes that feeling I was talking about as somebody that lived that belief structure for such a long time. That like you just, everyone wants to be free of it, but you can't. Once that seed is planted, you can't rip out the roots. You know what I mean?
But that's the perspective of the audience.
Yeah.
That's both sides of the argument right there, and I feel like we're probably on both sides. I lean more towards her. I want to.
You're definitely the sissy Spacek in our relationship.
Thank you, thank you. I am beautiful. The I can understand people. Believe it or not, there are people who are happy. It's crazy. It's crazy to think.
No one's happy.
But there are
in 2020.
No one's happy.
In 2020,
I think there are people out there who enjoy majority of the things that they have in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I don't trust them.
So, of course not. But then there are people who are out not to destroy that, but can't take the good with the bad. But I see his side of it too. I can't unknow these things, and I'm gonna pull on this thread and just because I want to get to the literally the bottom of it, so I can then be level set and say, okay, now I know the truth, and now I can go build my life back up.
Yeah, try to dig my way out.
But the problem is there's no end to that pit.
That's exactly right.
That's the problem. So that's why I tend to be on more her side, is where to me, I need to find the bottom, my own bottom. My bottom may not be your bottom, and that's okay too. But for me, I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna live this normal life with this, and just accept this, because if I just go down the rabbit hole, there's no end to that hole. And why would I do that to myself? Why would I do that to me?
That's really the biggest thing, the biggest conversation point, I think, about being someone that goes down that rabbit hole. And as someone who went very deep down that rabbit hole, I just want to tell people, don't do it.
Yeah, I don't think good comes from it, because you're not going to get vindicated or validated in the way you think.
Well, and because you can't do anything about it. That's the problem. This is super defeatist, and I hate even saying it. But that's the piece I had to come to just live my life, honestly, because I don't say it lightly. I went down for years, right? This was a focal point of my life from 2006 to 2009, was digging into how deep does this rabbit hole go of the wool being pulled over our eyes. And it got to the point where I was so depressed and so overwhelmed and so paranoid and so all of these things and I realized I'm not going to be able to solve these problems. So what's the point of me dwelling on it every single day? And I literally had to pull myself out and think, just live your life. Just do your best. Just live your life.
Be selfish. Be selfish.
And be a good person.
Be a good person. Absolutely.
And be ready. That was my compromise with myself. Was just be aware and be ready. You'll still be ahead of the curve if bad shit starts to happen, because you'll recognize it sooner because you know all this shit. But don't sit and think about all the bad stuff all the time, because you can't do anything about it, and you're just going to want to kill yourself. I'm fine ending it there.